Pete Alonso is officially the New York Mets home run king, breaking the record in an absolute blowout victory over the Atlanta Braves that just might have been a turning point for this Mets team.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. I've been covering the New York Mets on this show since the 2019 season. It's the only podcast that covers the Mets 7 days a week throughout the regular season. If you want to find some of my written work, you can do so over at justbaseball.com, where I work as the editor-in-chief. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Now, obviously, the big news of the day is Pete Alonso now being the Mets' all-time leader in home runs hit, and I will definitely spend the final segment today giving Pete his flowers for an incredible achievement and really just talking about everything he means to this franchise and what lies in store for him in the future with the Mets. But let's focus on the game first. And it was a pretty wild one because while the final score of 13-5 looks like a game that was a foregone conclusion that the Mets were going to win, it really wasn't, because Clay Holmes was not on tonight at all. First inning, he gives up a very quick run, a walk, a double, ground out, scores a run. Just like that, you're thinking, man, Mets are already going to be in a hole against this Braves team. But luckily, Holmes was able to navigate through that jam without giving up anything more than that one run. The Mets came up empty in the bottom of the first. Holmes put up a 0 in the second. And the Mets were able to get on the board in the bottom of the second inning. And it was Pete Alonso that scored the first run, but it was not that home run just yet. Pete nearly hits one out. You heard the crowd, brimming with anticipation every time he stepped up, and you heard that letdown when Pete Alonso hits a towering fly ball to left field, 98 miles per hour off the bat, a scorcher that just one hops the wall, came up a little bit short. Pete ends up on second base. Was almost left there. A couple of guys get out, but Cedric Mullins comes through with a runner in scoring position and two outs, gets a big base hit. Mullins really starting to swing it well. Very well could have been the addition the Mets needed at this deadline. Big hit for him there to get the Mets on the board. And then Francisco Alvarez gives the Mets an early lead. Alvy got a center cut fastball from Spencer Strider at 97 miles per hour, knew what to do with it, waited for it, drove it to deep right center field, hit it into the bullpen for a 2-run homer. Awesome to see Alvy celebrating that homer, and a really big moment in this game that probably gets overshadowed when you think about the next home run that was hit. Third inning, Clay Holmes gets a very fortunate break because of some terrible base running by the Braves. You had a runner on second base with one out. That runner was Jurickson Profar. Francisco Lindor gets a ground ball in the hole. Profar, for some reason, was trying to go there. The ball's hit to your right. You're not supposed to go, but he did. Lindor was able to get him in a pickle, and the Mets really ran it very well because you had some heads-up baseball. Brett Beatty flips it to Jeff McNeil. McNeil able to put the tag on Profar. Beatty slips back to second base. McNeil, very aware, immediately turns and throws it to second. I'm sure there was some good communication on that play, and they were able to get Drake Baldwin, who was trying to get that extra base, as a dead duck at second. So a very odd double play. I don't even know how many throws there were. I don't know if it was a 6-5, 4-5-4 double play, but ultimately a huge play there for the Mets to hold on to the momentum at the time. And then they really grabbed it as Brandon Nimmo gets a 2-out hit in front of Pete Alonso, and Pete gets served a very similar fastball as the one that Alvarez hit out. But this one was a lot different for Alvarez. It was a no-doubter, a towering shot, 109 miles per hour off the bat, over 400 feet. For Pete, it was a screaming line drive. I mean, an exit velocity of about 113 miles per hour, a launch angle of 19 degrees. Not easy to hit a home run out at 19 degrees. Basically, you're looking at 18 degrees is almost like the lowest you might get on a home run. But for Pete here, it was one that he hit to a deep part of the ballpark too, in right center field, into that bullpen that just somehow got enough air under it to make it into the pen. I thought it was going to smack against the wall and be a double that scored Nimmo, and you would have taken that. But instead, Pete gets his moment. He makes history. So awesome. Again, we're going to spend a whole segment on in the final segment, but just great to see him get that ovation from the crowd to get the curtain call to hug all of his teammates. Just awesome stuff. And you thought, all right, Mets are winning 5-1. This game's going to be easy at this point. And then Clay Holmes reminded you, yeah, the Mets have a glaring problem with their starting rotation, one that we're going to talk about in the next segment, because Frankie Montas is heading to the bullpen and some top prospects might be coming up. But Holmes might be heading to the bullpen as well. A brutal inning, gives up 4 runs on a couple of singles, a double, a walk, and then another double to Matt Olson before getting pulled. Gregory Soto got the Mets out of further damage, draining 2 runners in scoring position by getting the final out of the inning on the ground. Bottom of the 4th inning, the Mets are, in a position where it's 2 outs, Lindor's coming up. You're wondering, has the momentum left them? Is this going to turn into another brutal loss? And Pete Alonso's record is just going to be a footnote to, the furthering spiral of the New York Mets. Did not happen. Lindor sets the table, doesn't try to be the hero of himself. Says, you know what? I'm not swinging it well. They're giving me a bunt. I'm going to take it. 2 outs, lays down a bunt on the third base line, perfectly executed. One of those bunts where the way that the defense was playing him, you just had to get it down, and perfect fundamentals as Lindor typically has. Lays down a great bunt. Juan Soto draws a walk. All of a sudden, Brendan Nimmo's coming up with a chance to do some damage. Falls behind the count, but Spencer Strider does not throw the back foot slider that I think they were trying to. Instead, it looks more like a backdoor slider, but one that just hangs at the bottom of the zone for Nimmo, and Nimmo puts a great swing on it. His 20th of the season, a 3-run shot, gives the Mets an 8-5 lead, and it felt like, all right, maybe the Mets are going to be okay. Pete Alonso actually nearly goes yard again, ends up coming up short that was more right field to the warning track for Pete. Hit it hard, though. Again, he hit bullets all night long. He is really locked in right now. And so ultimately the Mets just take the 3 runs. Gregory Soto stays on, pitches a scoreless 5th, gave up a couple of singles, but worked his way around it. And the Mets went right back to work the following inning, again with 2 outs. Cedric Mullins and Francisco Alvarez back-to-back doubles. Brett Beatty gets an RBI single after that, and the Mets go up 10-5. And then Justin Hageman came in, and Hageman was outstanding, really saved the bullpen. Carlos Mendoza said it after the game. They only had 4 guys available. Trying to think who the 4 would have been, because you saw 2 of them in Soto and Hageman. I imagine maybe Reed Garrett would have been good to go, or maybe it was Stanek and Diaz, who knows, but only 4 guys available. You needed some length. It was good that he came in with a 10-5 lead. And, when you're the Braves and you have a miserable record and you're in the middle of August and Citi Field's rocking and you fall behind 5 runs and you have Austin Cox on the mound serving up meatballs, I get why their lineup, maybe didn't have as much going for them for the second half of that game, but you also have to credit Hageman for just getting the job done. First time since Pat Mahomes, not the quarterback, his father, threw 4 hitless innings out of the Mets bullpen, struck out 5, allowed just 1 walk. Hageman's numbers on this season are pretty absurd right now. He's got a 3.26 ERA and nearly 20 innings pitched with a 0.93 whip. So he continues to give the Mets good innings in that just long man depth role that might evaporate for him again, as the Mets are going to be doing some real interesting things with the pitching staff moving forward that we'll talk about next. But after that, after the 2-out rally with Mullins, Alvarez, and Beatty, Pete Alonso had his 254th home run hit in the 6th inning, one to deep left center field, really almost dead central, but a little bit left of that. That one more of a towering shot. That was a little more of a no-doubter. And Pete gets a second curtain call in the game. Just an awesome night for him. 7th inning, Alvarez, who, again, had an incredible game himself. 2 home runs and a double. And Alvy homers again in the 7th. Brett Beatty makes it back-to-back homers. And the Mets end up scoring again 13 runs on 16 hits, 6 home runs. And this was the hardest game of the series, because next up is Cookie Carrasco with an ERA over 6, and after that, it's Bryce Elder with an ERA over 6. So, or maybe it's over 5. Is it over 5 or is it over 6? Did I write it wrong in my notes, or did I remember it right on the show here? Let's see. Cookie, 6.25 for Carrasco. So, yeah, it's over 6 for those 2 guys. Maybe this is the beginning of a nice little run for the New York Mets, and if they can get the Braves to sort of give up that spoiler role, you're going to see them again next week. Maybe this could be a really good stretch for the Mets, and they might narrow that division lead that the Phillies have and get back into it before the Phillies come to town in a couple weeks here. But big game for the Mets. All's not fixed in one night. There's still a lot that has to change with this rotation. Again, we're going to talk about that next, but I think the Mets should be rolling this lineup right back out there tomorrow after scoring 13 runs. I don't need to see Mark Vientos. I don't need to see Ronnie Mauricio. This might be the best all-around group the Mets can put together. Granted, I don't want to get carried away from one game, and Spencer Strider was pretty awful, like if we're being completely honest about what happened. Strider definitely was not on. It was leaving a lot of pitches over the heart of the plate, as was the lefty that followed him in Austin Cox. But I really like the line the Mets put out there in this game with Beatty's defense at third. I think you're going to continue to see McNeil at second and Mullins in center field on a regular basis. So maybe Beatty's the answer at third and maybe Marte's the answer at DH. They both had pretty solid games on this one, as pretty much everybody did. The only guy that didn't get a hit was Jeff McNeil, and he did draw a walk, and I believe he scored a run. I might be wrong about that, but he definitely did get on base, and you had multi-hit games pretty much down the line for the Mets. I mean, you had multi-hit game from Nimmo, Alonso 3 for 5, Marte 2 for 5, Mullins 2 for 5, Alvarez 3 for 4, and Beatty 2 for 4. So big game for the Mets offensively, but again, the pitching was not great, particularly the starting pitching, I should say, because Hageman was. So we're going to talk about that rotation next here. Frankie Montas to the bullpen, maybe Clay Holmes following him there as well, and some top prospects who could be on their way as soon as this weekend. We'll discuss it all here in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by OpenPhone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had a service emergency like a burst pipe. If the first plumber didn't answer, you're just going to wait around? No, you're going to call the next one. And that's why having a reliable business line is so important. That's why you need OpenPhone. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system that helps you streamline and scale customer communication, all from an app on your phone or computer. Your whole team can share one number and respond to customers like a shared inbox. No more who's handling this, and the AI agents handle after-hour calls, answer common questions, and capture leads so you never miss a customer again. OpenPhone is offering Locked On Mets listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnMLB. That's OpenPhone, OpenPhone.com/LockedOnMLB. If you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Help us get closer to our next goal of 15,000 subscribers, which I would love to hit by the end of this season. And also make sure you have the notification bell on so you are notified anytime an episode drops or the show goes live, whether it's myself or Chris Schubert, who does our Locked On Mets postcast, giving you a show right after the final out of every Mets game. So make sure you're subscribed to our channel here with Locked On Mets. Now, going into this game, I didn't think there was going to be anything that could happen outside of Pete Alonso breaking an all-time record that would have topped the best news of the day, which is that Frankie Montas will not be making the next turn in the rotation. He is moving to the bullpen. He will be a reliever likely for the rest of this season. You never know what can happen. The plan right now is he's going to pitch his side session on schedule like he would do in between starts, but then he will start to serve as a reliever out of the bullpen beginning on Thursday. So Montas to the pen, that we know. David Peterson and Kodai Senga will finish off this series, and Carlos Mendoza said the Mets need a starter on Saturday, which insinuates that Sean Manaea will be going on regular rest on Friday. And Carlos Mendoza all but said that one of the top prospects is coming up. He did not make that official. He said that Noel McLean and Brandon Sproat are, quote, in the conversation. But as questions were asked, it was made pretty clear that these guys are deemed big league ready and will be joining the Mets, at least one of them, and potentially both of them, when you consider the start that Clay Holmes just had. You theoretically could have these guys go back-to-back. You could have Sean Manaea start on Friday, then go Brandon Sproat on Saturday, because Sproat last pitched on Thursday last week. So he would be going on, 7 days rest, right? Or Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 8 days rest. So my guess would be if they're bringing them both up, maybe it's Brandon Sproat. If they're just going to bring one up, maybe it's McLean, and McLean, who pitched on Sunday, goes on 5 days rest on Saturday. And they could hold off on Sproat a little bit if they decide to keep Holmes in the rotation. But I mean, Clay Holmes, another rough start. He had a couple of bad innings. Obviously, the first one, he was able to navigate around it. He was fortunate with that double play ball. Actually had two double play balls, one a traditional one in the second inning, a 4-6-3, and then that sort of wild one with the pickle in the third. But he couldn't get out of the fourth inning. And at a certain point, you had to look at the innings and think, yeah, this guy should be moved to the bullpen. And we talked about the last time that Holmes made a start after the game. He was even kind of alluding to the fact that you don't want to triple your innings in one season. I think he's ready to shut it down and to be a reliever for the rest of this season. Now, how do you make that happen? We'll see. When you look at where the rotation's at, what's interesting here is let's just say the Mets decide, you know what, they're going to go with Sproat and McLean on Saturday and Sunday, because also should mention that Paul Blackburn will make a rehab start tonight in Syracuse on Wednesday. So he will not be available this week. Soonest we'd see him is next Tuesday after an off day on Monday. So if all of that is to be true, if they decide to bring both of these guys up, for one, some people can certainly say, hey, the Mets are just waiting for August 15th to pass, because August 16th will be the first day that you could call these guys up to ensure that they maintain their rookie eligibility for next season, which I've talked to a lot of people about this on what's the incentive for teams on this. And ultimately, the thing that has come back the most, more than even what I talked about the other day about Super 2 status and trying to preserve, that extra year of arbitration, because if a player is for their free agent class of the top 22% in service time, they get awarded that extra year. They're Super 2 eligible, which means they hit arbitration a year sooner, like a Jarren Duran did for the Red Sox. He was in arbitration this year in year 3, and you get 4 years of arb instead of 3. So that was one of the things that I thought that was out there. Most people are telling me that this is probably just trying to hold on to that rookie status for the PPI, which is the prospect promotion incentive. So if these guys break camp next year as part of the opening day rotation, and one of them ends up putting together a season that's worthy of being the rookie of the year by maintaining that rookie status, obviously they're still in play for that. But more importantly, if they break camp with the team as part of the prospect promotion incentive, if they win the rookie of the year, the Mets are awarded a draft pick, or if they finish top 3 in the Cy Young at any point in their first 3 seasons of their big league career, again, the Mets are awarded a draft pick. So part of it, I think, is keeping that in line. To me, I've talked about this a bunch. I really think that this was a combination of things. Sure, that weighs into the decision-making. But I also think that the Mets wanted them to develop a little bit more. I think that's part of it. Brandon Sproat has been great lately, but it has been lately that he's really turned it on over the last month, maybe even 5 weeks, where we've seen him pitch at this level. Maybe it's 5 or 6 weeks, but he struggled early on in the season. Nolan McLean had some issues with left-handed batters, so working on that. And then also wanting to give the rotation that they expected to go into the season with a couple of turns and see if they can figure it out. And they certainly did not. And that's why Montas is going to the bullpen. That's why Holmes could follow him. So I think it's a couple of things for why the Mets have planned it out this way. But I talked about it on a recent show. I said, you know what? If their plan post-trade deadline was always going to be to call these kids up, they better have a good plan. Well, this could be a very good plan, because you're about to start a stretch. After an off day on Monday, we're going to play 16 consecutive days in a row. So you're going to need a 6-man rotation. And you are setting these guys up to maybe have 6 weeks here in this rotation to close out the season. And we'll see about having that 6-man rotation, but it could lend itself very well to adding the 3 pitchers we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, the 2 kids and Paul Blackburn, putting him into the fold next week. And that could be your 6-man rotation. So this is how it could look. Holmes moves to the bullpen. Maybe he could even start on Sunday, but he piggybacks with one of the kids. Let's just say that's what happens on Sunday. All right. So if that's the case, Paul Blackburn, again, starting tonight, he would be good to go on 6 days rest. He'd pitch, a week. He could either go on Wednesday and pitch a week from his previous outing, or he could go on Tuesday on 5 days rest. And it could be Blackburn, Peterson, Senga in that first series. Or it could be, Blackburn, Peterson, Senga, or Peterson, Blackburn, Senga. Then you go to Manaea, Sproat, McLean, the same trio that could potentially be pitching this weekend against the Mariners. That could become your 6-man rotation. So it'd be Blackburn, Peterson, Senga against the Nationals, Manaea, Sproat, McLean against the Braves. And then you roll with those 6 starters for a couple of turns to get through that stretch where you're playing the 16 games in 16 days. And if after a couple of turns, it's not working out well for one of the prospects or for Paul Blackburn, you can either demote one of the kids or you can dump Paul Blackburn and go back to a 5-man if that's what you choose to do. But you also will very soon after that get the benefit of September call-ups and being able to add an extra pitcher to the roster, which fits naturally with a 6-man rotation. The only problem with all of this is you just don't have enough spots until you expand the roster in September to hold on to Montas, Holmes, have the 2 top prospects on the roster, and Paul Blackburn. Because if you're talking about a 6-man rotation with the 6 guys that have been in the bullpen that we know they're not going to touch, which is, of course, Edwin Diaz, Ryan Helsley, Tyler Rogers, Gregory Soto, Brooks Raley, and Reed Garrett, that right there is 12. You are 2 struggling starting pitchers in Holmes and Montas, pushes it to 14. That's too many arms. So how do you get there? The first kid that comes up on Saturday, very easy. The Hagenman spot in the bullpen right now goes to them. All right, so that's the first spot. Second man up, you can DFA Ryan Stanek. Okay. But then if you're going to get Paul Blackburn up next week as well, that's where you run out of options. So either you don't even worry about Blackburn, you roll with a 5-man rotation with the kids and Senga and Peterson and Minaya, and then you have a bullpen day to stretch out during this stretch of the 16 games or anytime you need to add a starter in front of Senga, Holmes, or McLean, whatever it is. Or not Holmes or McLean or Sproat. You can go that way with it. Or again, if you want Blackburn in the fold and you want to be part of this rotation and he looks good at the start, then you're going to have to get creative, whether that is a IL stint. Can you go to Major League Baseball and say, hey, Clay Holmes has blown past the innings he has thrown. He doubled up his innings from last year, literally at this point. He's at 126 last 2 years, he was at 63. So now that he just made this start, we're going to put him on the IL for general fatigue and give his arm a rest. I think you could probably slide that past the league office and be fine with that. A actual injury, just considering all the circumstances. I don't know exactly how all those things work, but I think there's a world where you could probably put Clay Holmes on the IL, have him rest, and then rehab and shorten up to be a reliever, and then he can enter the fold in September. And he could sort of be your pseudo September call-up, getting Clay Holmes in the bullpen. If Clay Holmes starts pitching like the Clay Holmes from the Yankees out of the pen, well, look at that. It's just like another deadline pickup. You just got that much better in that bullpen. So I kind of think that might be the way to go about it, but I just don't know if that is viable. Like, I'm not sure if you can do that or if Holmes would want to do that. I just don't know. So if that's not the answer, the other answer would be just straight up cutting Montas because he has not been a good pitcher for you. But I don't know if you want to have $17 million of dead money on your books next year, because that's what would happen effectively because he has that player option. So if you were to DFA him, that's it. I mean, there's no other way around it. Frankie Montas, if he passes through waivers, I think technically he could accept the assignment to AAA, but he doesn't have to. He can just elect free agency and collect his money. So I think at this point, you're in a really tough spot with him. And you know what? I talked about it. He has a good fastball splitter combo. That could play out of the bullpen, and Montas could be better in that role than we're expecting right now. The one thing I will say about that contract for next season, Taijuan Walker, to me, is a great example of why you shouldn't completely give up on a guy. Not that Taijuan Walker, I think, is a great pitcher. But you know what? For a Phillies team that has lost Aaron Nola for most of this season, he's been very good for them. He has pitched in 25 games, 14 starts this season. He's up to 85 innings, and he's pitching to a 3.39. Now, last year, he had a 7.10 ERA. But under a 4-year, $72 million contract, Phillies never cut bait. And you know what? A veteran pitcher has turned in good innings this year. So you never know. Next year, you might love Frankie Montas. You might. So I don't think they're going to cut him. And that's where I think it's either getting creative with an IL stint for somebody. Maybe it is a really unfair option for Reed Garrett because Reed Garrett does still have options. So if you wanted to, you could always option Reed Garrett. Let's just say you did that on this Sunday, and then he's your September call up, and you have him down there. You have to be down there for 2 weeks, and that would actually be exactly it, 15 days. But I mean, Reed Garrett helps you win games, so that doesn't necessarily make sense to me. We'll see what the Mets do. I wouldn't be opposed to them outright cutting Montas, but I also understand that logistically it doesn't necessarily make the most sense, because if you wanted to, you could call both of the kids up, send one of them down after that, and have them back up in September as a September call-up. You can very easily do that. Whoever didn't pitch as well in their MLB debut, you send them down and say, all right, you're going to make 2 starts in Syracuse. You're going to be right back. That's an option too. So there's a lot that has to be determined over the weekend. There's going to be a lot of decisions to be made, but that's where the Mets are at right now with this pitching staff. And it's going to be interesting to see where they go from here. But we got to spend some time to close out the show celebrating Pete Alonso's achievement. So that's what we're going to do in just a minute here. We'll talk about Pete Alonso hitting 253 and 254 and what his future holds with the New York Mets. Speaking of Pete Alonso, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time, and there's going to be a ceremony before the game starts on Wednesday night to honor Pete Alonso and his achievement. If you want to go to the ballpark, Game Time will get you there. It's the place to go for last-minute tickets. Game Time takes the stress out of buying tickets because you can view your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. And prices are actually going to drop the closer you get to game time, so you can find incredible deals on last-minute tickets. Clear seat views, lowest price guarantee, and Game Time is the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, making it easy to browse the app for an exciting upcoming MLB game like Mets versus Braves tonight. Game Time is the place to go. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code Locked On MLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code Locked On MLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. For an everydayer that always tunes into the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider and become part of our texting service. This is where you can get updates from me anytime news breaks on the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime, take part in our Locked On Mets sign photo giveaways, and get a line graphic sent to your phone each day so you know who's in the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. So it's pretty fitting that Pete Alonso hits number 253 about 6 years after hitting number 53 against the same team. Go back to his rookie season. Pete Alonso was chasing that Aaron Judge rookie home run record that I believe was set in 2018, right? If I'm not mistaken, yes, 2018 when Judge set his record of 52. And Pete, on the second to last game of the season, homers against the Braves, also to right center field. Common theme for Pete Alonso, who's got incredible power to all fields, but particularly to right center. His first home run ever was hit to nearly dead central, but definitely a little bit right center field. Played, that home run was hit in Miami against the Marlins. Then home run number 53 that season came in right center field against the Braves, and now here was this one, number 253. 6 years later, 200 home runs later, he does it. He breaks the record. And it was just such an awesome moment from Gary Cohen's call. Pete Alonso stands on an iceberg all by himself. Such a cool call to just seeing the just jubilation for everyone in the ballpark. But Pete Alonso, the childlike smile on his face as he rounds the bases. And I was caught up in the moment. It didn't catch me at first, and I was holding back tears a little bit when it first happened, to be completely honest. But I actually did, I think, shed a tear when I was watching it back right before doing the show. I was watching it probably for like my 10th time tonight, but really focusing in one more time and just taking in that moment again. And what didn't strike me at first when it happened, that caught me on, I guess, my 10th watch here, where I was really focused on, I guess, probably the second time I was really actively watching it as I was preparing for the show, was the fact that the first guy that Alonso hugs after he touches home is Brandon Nimmo, who was on first base for the homer, a guy that's been there through it all. And the next guy who was on deck, Jeff McNeil. The two guys who he has played with his entire career are the first two guys that greet him after he hits that homer. It was storybook. I mean, you could not have scripted it any better. If you had to pick a team for Pete Alonso to hit that home run against, it's probably the Braves. And if you think about where the Mets are at in this season, yes, it's in the midst of what's been a devastating stretch, but maybe this is the turning point. Maybe this was the moment the Mets needed where, you know what? Yeah, Clay Holmes blew up and the lead was lost. But Brandon Nimmo said after the game, he went right to Cedric Mullins and said, we just got to get more. And, Carlos Mendoza talked about how frustrated he kind of was on the mound, getting the ball from Holmes, waiting for Soto to come out, just worrying about how they were going to get through the rest of that game. And Pete's cracking jokes, making him laugh. It was maybe a moment that needed to happen to let everybody forget about what has been and focus on what is to be. And Pete Alonso delivered that. And then he hits another home run. And the fact that he's now on this heater, who knows where he alone can carry the Mets down the stretch, because we know what Pete Alonso can do when he gets going, the way that he can just carry a lineup through stretches. Maybe this is that moment for him. He's got 28 home runs on the season. He's hit 6 in his last 10 games in the month of August. And the most home runs he's hit in the month is 7 in June. So he's definitely trending towards the most home runs he's going to hit in a given month. And it's not outside the realm of possibility that he's got another 40 home run season in him this year, because he's at 28 and he's got whatever it is, 43 games left to play or however many left. He just hit 6 in 10 games. If he does that again, he's knocking on the door almost of at least 35. So, this has been an unbelievable season for Pete Alonso, and I'm so glad and thankful that they were able to get into a room or get to Pete Alonso's club and have, Stearns and Cohen and Pete and Boris and some of the other representatives that he has just together and to figure this deal out. And it was $30 million well spent on this contract. Granted, if you factor in the luxury tax, $58 million well spent. And I think Steve Cohen would tell you that this game was worth that investment. Getting this moment, having the fan base get to galvanize around Pete Alonso. Now they're going to have that special event before the game on Wednesday where they're going to honor Pete. Maybe Daryl's going to come out. Who knows, as they pass that torch. But so amazing that Pete Alonso is still in a Mets uniform, still delivering these moments. And you look ahead, he's got a $24 million player option for next season that will be turned down, and rightfully so. He deserves a long-term deal. And you look at the free agent class coming up. You got Kyle Tucker, Kyle Schwarber, Pete Alonso. I think that's the top three. Eugenio Suarez is having a great season, but he's going to be, 35, 36 next year? So, who knows what type of a market he's going to enjoy. He's 34 now, so probably 35 next season. Those are the top 4 bats. Cody Bellinger is going to get paid because he's a bat and a glove, and there's not a lot of guys that do both. And you got Bo Bichette, a couple other guys, but I'm actually, for just baseball, we're publishing articles now, previewing the free agent class. There's not a lot of bats to be had. And I think at this point, it's evidently clear that Pete Alonso belongs in a Mets uniform, at least for the foreseeable future. And they got to do whatever they can to make it happen, because there's not a single free agent that makes more sense for the New York Mets this offseason than Pete. And you could throw Kyle Tucker at me in the comments on YouTube. Feel free. Kyle Tucker's not going to be a Met. Doesn't make sense. You already signed one right fielder to a mega deal. It's not going to happen with Tucker. It just doesn't make sense. I don't think they're going to put Kyle Tucker in center. You got Nimmo and Soto locked up. There's not a better free agent for the Mets. You could say Kyle Schwarber, but you know what's going to happen if you do that? If you steal Schwarber from the Phillies, expect the Phillies to steal Pete Alonso from the Mets, and that's just ridiculous. If you want to go sign both, but that's not realistic. Just bring Pete back. You got to, if you trade Vientos, do whatever you got to do to make it make sense for your roster fit long term. But Pete should be part of this team. He should be part of the next couple years of Mets baseball where they're trying to make this run to win a World Series. He's homegrown. He is the heartbeat of that team at times. Obviously Lindor is too. Lindor is the leader. People follow Lindor, but Pete has still, in a weird way, when you have Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor and all of these guys, Pete still kind of ends up being the face of it all. It's crazy how that has happened, but I don't know if there's a Met more beloved than Pete Alonso right now, especially today, certainly. But he said it after the game, talking to the media. He said he wants to play through his age 40 season, because they're sort of asking him, how many home runs can you hit in your career? And he says that he wants to play, until he's 40 and through that age 40 season. And then he said it's up to Steve and David to make that happen. I don't think you have to give him the 10-year deal. Actually, I know you don't have to give him the 10-year deal right now. But you got to commit to him more than 2 years. And you got to give him maybe a fat 4-year contract. Throw some vesting options in there that make sense for both sides for a 5th or a 6th year maybe to lengthen it out if that's really what's going to make Pete happy. And you never know. That fat 4-year contract can come with some deferrals to make it team friendly. And it might make all the sense in the world when, pens put to paper. But they can't do the game of chicken again. Pete Alonso belongs in a Mets uniform. And if you think about where he can go, how many home runs he can hit, sitting at 254, let's just say it's 10 more home runs this season. So let's say he finishes the year at 264 homers. Then if he averages 35 a season for the next 4 years, which I think is realistic for the production that we have seen from Pete Alonso, I think he has that in the tank. If he does that, he'll be going into his age 35 season past the 400 home run mark. And if he wants to play until he's 40, which would be 6 more years after that, 500 is a real possibility for Pete Alonso. And even if he plays 4 more years after hitting 140 home runs with 35 a year over the next 4 after this season, he'd be 100 away, where 25 a season gets him there. So I think there is a real chance where Pete Alonso ends up in Cooperstown with a Mets cap. I think if he ends up in Cooperstown, it'll be a Mets cap regardless of where his career takes him from here. It's a lot of work in store for him, but the one thing that you can't doubt about Pete Alonso is the work ethic. That guy works as hard as anybody. He has done everything right and in a different way than the last number we just saw retired with number 5. And I'll tell you what, Pete Alonso, I think that home run solidifies what probably was already fated for him, which is the fact that number 20 is going to be retired one day. For sure. No doubt about it in my mind. But, David Wright is, Captain America. He is kind of your perfect ball player. Pete Alonso is the antithesis of that in the sense that he's clumsy. He's not he hasn't been the best defensive, or metrically, he's not the best defensive first baseman. I still take his defense because I think he's amazing around the bag and everything else. And another thing where when he was a prospect, the thing that was holding him back, holding him from being a consensus top 100 guy until maybe the very end before he debuted in 2015 was the glove. Oh, he doesn't have a position. He's a DH, yada, yada, yada. Well, he's an everyday first baseman who posts and just is consistent production. And again, he is not the most picturesque baseball player, but he's got that big boy strength, the power that is undeniable, and he just mashes baseballs, and he's just a guy that loves to hit. And you look at this franchise and the talents that they've developed. I mean, this is a franchise that has been built on pitching. And when it comes to their top position players, it's usually trade acquisitions. Keith Hernandez, Gary Carter, Mike Piazza, Carlos Beltran. It's guys that get brought in. Even Howard Johnson, I mistakenly called him a homegrown Met on an episode at one point in time and was rifled back. Oh, no, he started with the Tigers. Didn't even realize it. I mean, you look at the Mount Rushmore for homegrown position players for the New York Mets. Pete Alonso is on that Mount Rushmore already. It's David Wright, Darryl Strawberry, David Wright, Pete Alonso. I don't even know who the fourth face is on that Mount Rushmore. Probably Jose Reyes. Maybe Brandon Nimmo is probably in that conversation and gets there over the course of this contract. But what Pete Alonso has done in a Mets uniform is so special, and there is no reason that should end. None. Because what we've seen with young players this season, you might think the Mark Vientos can replace Pete Alonso, but you don't realize how incredible the consistent production is from Pete Alonso until you really start to sit back and think about it and look at it and compare him to some of the other guys and some of the other peers. And when it comes to homegrown Mets, it's those three. It's Straw, it's Wright, it's Alonso. That's it. And you look at the production, 53 home runs, 120 RBIs in his rookie season. Aided a little bit by juice baseball, but still a fantastic year. 37 and 94 in 2021. after hitting 16 home runs in 57 games in the 2020 season. 40 home runs, 131 RBIs to lead the league in RBIs in 2022 on a 101 win Mets team. 46 and 118 in 2023. Last year, down season, still hit 34 home runs and 88 RBIs, and then had one of the biggest home runs in Mets franchise history on a fantastic playoff run where he was amazing. And then you have this season, 119 games in, 28 home runs already. He's 4 RBIs away from 100, and it's August 13th. He's got an 880 OPS, which would be the best mark of his career since his rookie season. Has a chance to hit for his highest average ever. He's at 267. Best average ever had in season was in 2022 at 271. Best on base percentage he's ever had was back in his rookie season at 358. He's sitting at 352 right now, which is an identical mark to what he did in 2022. And his slug right now at 528 is the best since his rookie season. You know, Pete is a more complete hitter this year than I feel like he has been probably ever. I think 2022 was the best season Pete's had before this. Because I mean, the rookie season obviously is amazing, but it was such a weird year with the juice ball that I don't even know how to count it properly. You know, 2022, Pete Alonso was a completely well-rounded, accomplished hitter that was driving a great baseball team. And so I look at that as the best version of Pete up to this point. But this season, while there's been certainly ups and downs of the year, a strong finish, he's going to have numbers up there with anything he's ever done. And if the floor is 34 home runs, then what are we talking about? What are we talking about? I think Pete still has 4 more great years left in him. I really do. And I think that any contract the Mets offer him should start there. Should be a 4-year deal at least. And I think they should just find a way to get something done. And no, I don't think they should give him the blank check and give him a 10-year contract and be crazy. They still got to be smart. But the next half, the first half of his 30s should be played in the Mets uniform. He should hit number 400 as a New York Met. And then where he goes from there, who knows? We don't know what the future is going to hold. But this guy deserves to continue to write this legacy with this franchise because it's a special one. And one day, you know, in 20, 40, 15 years from now, whenever it is, we're all going to be celebrating Pete Alonso getting that number 20 retired. And who knows how much further he could take his career beyond that. But it has been a truly special Mets career. And I just got to say, I am so thankful that I've gotten to cover it all. You know, my tenure with Locked On Mets lines up identical with Pete Alonso. I started right before the 2019 season began. Spring training, the final week of spring training in 2019. And the first big story I covered was Pete Alonso breaking camp and eventually, you know, breaking that rookie home run record. And so here we are here 6 years later and Pete is now the all-time home run king for the New York Mets. A truly fantastic accomplishment for a guy that has worked so hard and deserves all the acclaim and all the flowers that he's going to get over the next couple of days. He's earned it, and I'm just so happy for him. Anyway, that's going to be all for this fairly long edition of Locked On Mets. Appreciate all of you who tuned in for the entirety of this show. As always, make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Hit subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description. We'll go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen, your first watch every day. Now for your second watch, head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything in the world of sports. Talking about Locked On Sports Today with our local host from each team, league-wide host from each league. Find Locked On Sports Today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.